This is From the Desk with Jada Montemarano. Conversations with the innovators, leaders, and experts who are shaping the future of human resources through cutting-edge technology, only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Welcome to From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, the podcast where we explore the world of HR. We'll discuss trends, hot topics, and dive into the tools that help organizations improve how they attract, retain, and support their people, while also sharing with job seekers how they can land the perfect role during this tumultuous time. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. This is From the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano, where we bring the hottest HR news from the desk right to you. And today's guest is a seasoned expert bringing together compliance, onboarding, and employment law. John Mazzeo is Senior Director of Vertical Screen's I-9 Success business line, where he leads efforts to simplify and streamline the employment eligibility verification process for organizations nationwide. With years of experience under his belt, John is passionate about helping employers stay ahead of evolving regulations while creating a smoother experience for new hires. Under his leadership, I-9 Success is setting a new standard in I-9 compliant technology. So if you ever wondered what goes into building an onboarding process, this is the conversation you won't want to miss. So please welcome John to the show. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to start off simply something you probably can easily say off the top of your mind right now. What is I-9 Success business line? What do you do and what can people expect from it?
So we are a full service business working with the electronic I-9 solution. So within the larger vertical screen umbrella, we have a number of different services, everything from background screens to drug screens to OHS and fingerprinting, as well as advanced identity verification. And I-9 is another one of those services that we offer. We're a little bit different than a lot of the other folks in the marketplace, where we hired myself, a seasoned immigration attorney with years of I-9 enforcement experience, just under 4 years ago, to revamp the program, to grow the program. So where there are a lot of good solutions out there, there are very few that are tailored for the complex immigration scenarios and other, compliance complexities that may be thrown at users on a day-to-day basis. And we fit the I-9 process into your larger onboarding workflow. I have some clients who will do a biometric identity verification that rolls into a background check and then rolls right into the I-9 virtual product, where we complete the I-9 on the business's behalf, taking out that element of risk that you may have. So that's what we do every day. We're trying to get better and better and comply with whatever comes out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
We know that's changing a lot these days. So for people who may not know, obviously, or not obviously, many of us out there have applied to jobs and have done this whole onboarding process. And we've probably experienced some sort of I-9 during that. But if people don't know or haven't experienced it, what is that I-9 process for the job seekers that are applying, but also for the employers?
Right. So from the new hire experience, Form I-9 is required for every new hire on or after November 6, 1986, which is the implementation of the Immigration Reform and Control Act. So if you're a new hire, you're a W-2 employee after 11/6/86, you are completing Form I-9. What does it do? It establishes your identity and your ability to work in the United States. Many people use their passport because it will satisfy both of those criteria. Other people use a driver's license and social security number, or social security card rather. For employers, it is a very expensive 2-sheet piece of paper, where the fines can range anywhere from a couple $100 per violation to upwards of $2,500 per violation. And that's per form. So you have a large business, 100, 150 people, you get 50 violations, it can add up pretty quickly. And a lot of employers are now using it as a de facto identity verification tool to ensure that the person that they're hiring is the actual person that they interviewed. And that form also has to be completed after offer and acceptance. So you can complete it before your start date, but it must be offered after offer and acceptance.
And as someone who, like I said, I've applied to jobs, I've done this process before. I guess from our side, when we're doing it, we're just clicking buttons, we're sending you our info. But from the back end, you had to create this whole section of I-9 success to tackle this, right? So what was it in this I-9 space that needed someone to really focus on it and figure this stuff out?
So we saw, and this was before I entered, prior to COVID, we have a network of 2,100 sites throughout the country that take fingerprints. So I could do your fingerprints for any of the regulated industries, et cetera. We had a client reach out and say years ago, 10, 15 years ago, and say, do you have any idea what this I-9 thing is? I don't want to do it anymore. You take it. So we actually, years ago, programmed an additional piece of functionality into those fingerprint machines that would allow individuals to complete Section 2. And we serve as the agent of the employer completing Section 2. When I arrived just about 4 years ago, we rebuilt that entire system. And before COVID, we were doing about 4,000 of these per month. At the height of COVID, we were doing about 5,000 a day. Verifications in the field. And then what really pushed us was the introduction of the virtual I-9 inspection rule, meaning that if you're an E-Verify employer and if you're keeping copies of the documents, you can complete Form I-9 through a live video interaction such as this one. And we knew this was coming. We knew sort of the bare bones of it. So we had a plan. And I'm very proud to say there was a Friday in August, I think it was August 23rd, the government said, starting August 1st, you can do this. July 23rd, August 1st, on September 5th of 2023, we rolled out our virtual solution, and we've seen astronomical growth in it where companies, they say, listen, we don't want to handle the I-9 anymore. We know it's extremely complex. We know that, it just as you referenced earlier, Jada, the regulations and who is work authorized are constantly changing from day to day and hour to hour. We want someone else to work on this for us. And really, that's the void that we filled.
And speaking of that void, your growth you saw was exponential in companies needing this. Why do you think this part of the onboarding process is something that was maybe not forgotten, but wasn't already taken on by these companies? Why was it so needed that you were going up to 5,000 a day?
So, what really was one of the benefits of COVID was that the people we saw people didn't go into an office. And it became increasingly hard for employers to say, come into the office and we'll complete your Form I-9. And the government offered a workaround that required some back end work. And what we offered to clients was the ability to have it done in person, completely done, period. No back end work needed, no follow up, and not expose any of your employees. We worked with our sites to develop certain safety protocols, ensure that everyone was protected. But that's really what the growth catalyst was. And we've continued to improve it and really market it and improve it and make the customer experience better. And it's just kept growing.
Hey, anything that can make these onboarding processes easier, at least even from the end, is great because you have to go to like 7 different places sometimes and gather all these documents. And speaking of kind of the change and everything going on, it doesn't need to be too political at all for this answer, but you mentioned that there has been a lot of changes to immigration and status and all of that. So how does a company that literally that is your main focus, how have you guys been rolling with the punches? And is there things that you have to change on your end, or what should employees or employers know about all these changes?
Yeah. So from our perspective, it's been busy, right? But we are really rolling with the punches. How do we do that? I stay abreast of what's coming out of the government, what USCIS is doing. We've built a lot of relationships with other practitioners, larger law firms that may have access to, hey, someone at CIS told me this is coming down the pike. But really, it's the that skill and the resilience that I learned being in government during the first Trump administration of going from one day to another, you might be doing something totally different. And that's a skill that I sort of had to dust off and start off with this administration. And really what we're doing is digesting the news and implementing whatever changes need to be made. This morning, I saw that the termination of TPS for Afghani nationals was stayed for another week. So we went in and we updated a whole bunch of our systems to reflect that. And it's just another one of those things where we knew that this change would come. We knew how it would impact our systems and our clients, and we wrote out a playbook, November 10th, of when these things happen, this is how we're going to implement them. For employees, it's really difficult and it's really hard because, even from day to day, these individuals may not know if they're going to be able to remain in the United States or work, or what their legal status is. So it creates this really awful limbo for them. And similarly, for employers, where, I spoke to a reporter about this a couple of weeks ago. Depending on how the litigation shakes out, you might have a third of your workforce that was work authorized yesterday, but isn't work authorized tomorrow. And how you grapple with that, not only discerning who's work authorized and who's not as an HR practitioner, but from a workforce continuity perspective, it's become very, very difficult. And people have had to get innovative to, make sure I can operate tomorrow.
And I was going to ask that question next for someone who doesn't have the luxury of working with I-9 Success. Maybe they're still doing this on their own or working with other different companies. Are there any tips that you can give? I'm assuming maybe smaller companies that don't have the resources to hire anyone like you from the outside. Do you have any tips on how they can navigate this time, or is it just changing too quickly?
So the best thing you can do as a practitioner, an HR practitioner who does not work with someone like us or work with a large law firm, is to sign up for all of the free law firm alerts you can get. LinkedIn is a great place where there's a real large number of immigration attorneys and business attorneys who are constantly posting about these things, and start following them, because that's social media is where it's going to go first. Some of the deep dives will come with client alerts and freebies from law firms, but I think one of the most uh, successful tools that I've even used for years is sort of an alerts feature, where I have them for anytime the word e-verify or Form I-9 or TPS pop up on the internet. The next morning I get a digest, or later that day I get a digest, and I can start following things from there. That's the sort of infrastructure that you have to build around yourself to tackle these challenges.
And I know it's changing day to day and we don't have the exact answers, but you mentioned a little bit earlier that you and your team had an idea that some things were changing, so you tried to plan a little bit. Do you see any changes or updates that may be potentially coming that you can warn some of our listeners about, or is it just too soon to say?
So we're going to see continued terminations for the TPS beneficiaries, which will mean more individuals will come out of their workforce. Also, more individuals will apply for asylum, other benefits, and you're going to see continued backlogs with those case processing times. And how does that impact employers? It means that someone may present to you and say, I'm work authorized. This, I applied for asylum under the statute, I'm work authorized, but they have no document to prove it. So that's something where it's going to really get interesting. There's about a 2 million case backlog now, and it's growing. The second is in tune with that backlog is the government during the Biden administration said, if you apply to renew your EAD, your existing EAD can be good for up to 540 days. There's a rule being drafted at CIS now that will actually terminate that extension flexibility. So while the government's going to take you a year and a half, 2 years to give you an EAD card, you are now going to not have the benefit of an extra 18 months of work authorization while they do their job. The third rule, and this really impacts schools, universities, health systems, is there's going to be a dramatic change. It's over at OIRA now, uh, to limit the ability of F students and J researchers to remain in the United States for longer periods of time. So it's going to create additional headaches. What I like to say is, while not a political statement, really an observation of what's on the ground, this administration is working to render people ineligible to work, unable to work, meaning they can't prove that they're work authorized, or unwilling to work, meaning they are too afraid to leave and get out into the workforce.
It's going to be crazy times ahead with all of that, as we've been seeing already. It's been hard enough in the workforce to get jobs and find jobs and apply to jobs, and now it's another wrinkle in that. And to end the show, I always like to kind of look to the future, look ahead. So in this case, you spoke about how I-9 success was really birthed out of the pandemic, the work from home. That's really where it exploded. Do you see anything else in this onboarding process that may be changing, may get more automated, and if another branch of your business you guys may be starting?
So and we have this already, but the increased attention on biometric identity verification at the beginning of your onboarding process, and it's not going to necessarily be driven by I-9, but by those needs. But many employers that I speak to are concerned: is this person the person who I hired or interviewed? Is the North Korean remote worker scams where either company information is being pilfered by the North Koreans or similar other nation states, or these companies in the US think they have hired someone in the United States and they're actually sending a check to somewhere in North Korea where the government starts cracking down on that as a sanctions violation. That's going to be a big thing going into 2025, 2026, and we're paying special attention to it. And the one other thing I'll call out is the importance of a work stream. Yeah, I said at the beginning, I have some clients who their dedicated work stream is identity verification, background, and then virtual I-9 as a service. Locking that down and having that continuity not only makes it less likely that you're going to have bad data or a bad actor is going to get in, but you're also going to have a larger buy-in rate by the employees because you're able to say, all right, you have to do these three things. It's going to take you 15 minutes, one credential, and you're done.
Awesome. Thank you so much today, John, for your insight. I really appreciate you joining us and kind of explaining this really timely issue that's going on right now that maybe many people didn't know was happening.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And thank you all out there for listening. You can catch us every Friday wherever you find your podcasts. And if you're hungry for other Purple Acorn shows, you can head to purpleacornnetwork.com and check us out on LinkedIn as well. I'll see you next time on From the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano.